Yes, that's better.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being punctual. Welcome to our second chapter meeting of our 2021-2022 year. As many of you will know, each month we try to do a different educational session where we'll focus on a different competency or a different area in facilities management. My name is Vaughn Halliday. I'm the current president of the Trinidad and Tobago chapter. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you today Keith Spencer, who is going to be presenting to us on the ISO standards in facilities management. Keith Spencer is an experienced real estate, facilities management, property management, and project management professional, and has held leadership positions in the real estate and financial sectors in Trinidad and Tobago. He holds an MSc in Real Estate and Property Management from the University of Salford, a postgraduate diploma in Project Management from Henley Management College, and has been a project management professional since 2010. He's also the holder of the Certified Facilities, the CFM designation from the International Facility Management Association, as well as the Pro-FM credential from Pro-FMI. And it's also noteworthy to note that Keith Spencer was also the first person in Trinidad to also attain both of these credentials. Keith Spencer was instrumental in the establishment of this very chapter, Trinidad and Tobago chapter of the International Facility Management Association in 2009. And since then, he has held the positions of Vice President and President of the chapter. He has experience in several ISO management standards, including ISO 9001, 41001, 45001, and is a certified lead auditor for ISO 41001. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to turn you over in the hands of Keith Spencer.
Thank you, Vaughn. I'm doing a mic check. Are you all hearing me clearly?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great, thanks. Thanks for the introduction, Vaughn, and welcome to participants to this afternoon's proceeding. All right, it is my pleasure to present on this very interesting topic, the ISO 41K family of standards. You know, as facilities practitioners, we manage the interface between place, people, and processes, which each within themselves can be very demanding, making our job even more difficult and at times overwhelming, especially in an era of reduced budget, constrained resources, and biological disruption. We are asked to do more with less. We all know that facilities management is an intensely demand-driven profession. Therefore, it leaves us very little time to strategize, to plan, and to optimize our facilities operations. I'm of the view that the ISO 41K family of standards is an indispensable tool in the arsenal of today's facility professionals with the potential of changing the game. I hope that by the end of this presentation, I can convince you so. So what are we going to discuss today? Just trying to get my slide to move down. For some strange reason, it's not moving. Right. Right, so to kick off things, what I'll present an introduction to the ISO organization and the standard development process. Next, I will give a brief overview of the family of the ISO 41000 standard. Then we would do an overview of the main standard, which is the ISO 41001. We're going to look at the options for implementing 41001. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. So a bit about about me and the organization which I represent. So actually, I am the Chief Trainer and Lead Consultant for Cerebri Solutions Global. And we offer 3 lines of services: training in facilities, property management, asset management; consultancy in the area of facilities management. For example, we do strategic facilities planning, service level agreements, preparation of facilities management contracts, property management agreements, as well as lease optimization. The 3rd line of business deals with financial modeling, and that has to do with real estate development. So what we offer is pre-credit assessment for funding for construction projects, as well as for commercial mortgage financing. In terms of our ISO 14001 products, we offer training, which is essentially, the first one is a primer, which is essentially an introduction to persons who are not familiar with the standard into the main standard, the ISO 14001. We also offer pre-auditing against the standard. These are for organizations who want to assess where they are against the standard. We also provide internal auditing services for organizations that are certified and for organizations that wish to be certified. And we also provide consultancy service to assist organizations in the implementation of ISO 14001. So I'd like to get a feel of where we are in terms of our familiarity with the standard. So I want to invite participants to take a few minutes to complete this poll. So the poll has been launched. So I invite you to take a few minutes to complete the poll. Right, so this is the results. 42% not familiar at all with the standard. We have 54% somewhat familiar and 4% very familiar. So I hope for each group I could share something with you this afternoon that would be beneficial. All right, so the International Organization of Standards is actually a global federation of national standard bodies, and they're essentially responsible for the development and maintenance of international standards. So for example, the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards would be one such national standard bodies. So throughout the world, several national standard bodies who are responsible for the development and dissemination of standards throughout their countries. The organization is popularly known by its short form, which is ISO, which is pronounced ISO and not ISO. It's not an acronym, but rather it's a backronym, which is derived from the Greek term isos, which means equal alike. And that is really meant to reinforce the point that all members enjoy equal status in the federation. There are 3 membership categories within the ISO organization. We have full members, of which there are currently 122 full members. The full members, they have full voting rights. The correspondent members are countries which do not have their own national standard bodies, but they want to be kept informed about the work of ISO. The last group are the subscriber members. They are countries with small economies. They pay reduced membership fees and are allowed to follow the development of standards. So what are standards and why do we need them? A standard essentially is a document which is established by consensus of subject matter experts and approved by the ISO that provides guidance on the subject matter of interest. And standards do serve a purpose. They ensure consistency of the essential features of a good or service. Features of interest would be like quality, safety, economy, very important, reliability, efficiency, and effectiveness. So what these standards do, they define as at a minimum what we ought to do, and this is left up to the organization to determine how to get it done. So just to reinforce, the standards set them bare minimum guidelines, and organizations can build from those guidelines or from that framework. There are principally 2 types of standards. There are the guidance documents, and there are what we call management system standards. And those standards are standards which usually end in 01. So for example, we have 45,001, 9001, 41001. And these are standards against which an organization could apply for certification. So how does ISO do its work? The work of ISO is done through national standard bodies. The national standard bodies get together and they form what is called a technical committee. So for the facilities management discipline, the technical committee 267 was established by ISO to lead the development of the standards for the FM industry. How does ISO work? Once there is a demand or market for a standard, then the stakeholders would indicate to their national standard bodies, who would then communicate to the ISO organization that they're interested in formulating standard or set of standards. The standards are essentially created by subject matter experts. Those are people within the industry. There is also contribution from non-governmental organizations, government agencies, and from academia. So these get together to formulate standards through the auspices of the technical committee, in this case, Technical Committee 267. And really the members' role is to, so the member national standards body, for example, Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards, their role in the whole standard procedure formulation is to identify the experts who would represent their company or who represent their country on the technical committee. The central ISO secretariat is the one who coordinates the whole standard development process and publish the respective standards. So what does the ISO Technical Committee 267 looks like. This is a organizational chart of the committee. The committee has two advisory groups. Advisory Group 1, which focuses on the roadmap for the ISO 4110 series of standards, and is responsible for recommending the strategic focus regarding the current and future work of the technical committee. And some of the objectives are to maintain current energy levels within the committee, to recommend work items using the 4101 as the base standard, create a viable shortlist, and of course, to prioritize the work of the committee. The second advisory group is the communication group. Communication is very interested in terms of standard development. And this group really focuses on communication and dissemination of information relating to the formulation of standards. So they're responsible for creating awareness and for promoting the adoption of the standards and developing the communication strategy and implementation plan. The work groups, so there were initially 8 work groups, 2 of which have now been disbanded, group 2 and 3. The first work group, Group 1, is responsible for drafting documents and standards within the context of the facilities management and the opportunities and outcomes that have an impact on the built environment, with the purpose of improving productivity of the core business and the quality of life of the people. So the 2 key work items from Working Group 1 would be the first standard, which is ISO 41011 and ISO 41019, which is currently being worked upon. Working Group 4 deals with strategy and policy, and that group is responsible for drafting documents and standards within the context of providing strong planning framework and support for the implementation of FM services and function. The current work item for this working group is 41018, which is the facilities management policy, which is currently under development. Then we have working group 5, which deals with human resources. And that group is responsible for developing standards that deals with the people part of the organization. Their work item is currently ISO 41015, which deals with influencing behaviors for improved facility outcome and user experience. Working Group 6 deals with technology, and we are faced with a lot of emerging technology as far as the industry is concerned, building information modeling, artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. So this group is responsible for drafting standards within the context of providing guidance on how to properly utilize workflows, teams, systems, and frameworks, and data to properly utilize technologies and digital capabilities in the line of FM, while paying attention to the whole life cost and understanding of business strategy. So this work group is currently working on ISO 41016, which is technology and facility management. Then we have work group 7, which deals with energy management, and they are responsible for providing standards that supports the organization, that includes requirements and guidance for emergency preparedness and energy management. Their current work item is ISO 41017, which deals with emergency preparedness and management in an epidemic. And the last working group is Working Group 8, and they deal with performance measurement and improvement, and they're responsible for drafting standards that will influence positive outcomes for the design of people, place, and processes, and includes requirements for guidance, measuring, and monitoring, and improving facilities management performance at the workplace. Their current work item is ISO 14020, which is performance measurement in the facilities management environment. So moving on to the next slide, if I can get it to move. Some problems in getting the slides to move down. Just want to mention that within the technical committee, there are 27 P members, and P members are members that are full participants on the technical committee, as opposed to the O members, which are observer members, and they simply do not participate directly in the work of the committee, and they just observe the progress. So for example, the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standard status is that of an observer on this technical committee. So let's move down. For some reason, my slide isn't moving down. Right. So this graphic is really to demonstrate functionally how the standards fall as far as the different themes. So there are several standards which deals with, which are overarching. So for example, under concepts and contents, we have 3 standards, which is the 41011, which deals with the vocabulary, 41013 and 41019. We also have the 41001, which is the major standard. And in terms of planning and support, we have 410.014, which deals with strategy, and of course 410.018. 410.012 falls under the business and finance swim lane, and 410.017 deals with business resiliency and business continuity. And of course, people factors, it's 410.015. Quality, which deals with performance, is 410.20, and technology, of course, is 410.60. So let us look at the house that the Technical Committee 267 built. And we're going to start with the first standard, which is ISO 41011, and that standard is what defined the vocabulary for the remaining standards. So this was the first in the series of standards to be published. It is currently being reviewed. The document comprises 3 sections, it's 12 pages in length, and its purpose is to define the terms used in the facilities management standard. And this is important because if we have to benchmark services and costs, we must have a common vocabulary in terms of definition, in terms of what is included or excluded from facilities management. So the 41011 is very important in terms of setting the groundwork, in terms of a common understanding for the remaining standards. The second standard is 41012, and this is a very important standard. This standard deals with guidance and strategic sourcing and development of agreements. It's a pretty large standard comprising of 52 pages and 10 sections and 4 appendices. This standard provides guidance on sourcing and development of agreements for facilities management and preparation of service level agreements in particular. The key elements of this standard is that it's based on the FM sourcing process. It defines the FM roles and responsibility in the sourcing process and the development process and structures for typical agreement models. So this standard provides a very comprehensive guideline in terms of how you procure facilities management services, how you set up your agreements, and actually how you manage your agreements for the best outcome for the organization. 41013, that standard was released in 2017, and that standard develops on the 41011 and deals with the scope, key concepts, and benefits of facilities management. It's a very small standard, 7 pages with 7 sections. And what it does, it outlines the key concepts, benefits of FM, and it provides the context for use and application of the terms defined in 41011. 41014 was released last year, and this standard deals with the development of facilities management strategy. Comprises of 8 sections and 4 appendices. It's a pretty long standard also, comprising 42 pages. And this standard provides guidance on the development of a strategy for FM, and it ensures that there's alignment between the facilities management requirements and the objectives, needs, and constraints of the core business. Remember, facilities management supports the core business of the demand organization, improves the utility and benefits that the facility provides for the betterment of the demand organization and its core business, and aims to meet stakeholders' needs and applicable requirements in a consistent manner. This standard also aims to promote sustainability in a globally competitive environment. So for those of us who are interested in strategy, this is a very key and useful standard that provides guidance in how you develop facilities management strategy and how that strategy is supposed to be integrated into the core business of your client or your demand organization. The next standard is 41015. This standard is currently under development, and its purpose is to assist facilities managers with the identification of, one, the culture of the organization, understanding the organizational culture, how the organization operates, how it communicates is very critical to the role of the FM if the FM is to effectively provide its service to the organization. The standard is also geared towards helping the FM understand the roles of persons within the organization, how they affect and how they are affected by the facilities management system and the facilities. It also aims at helping FMs understand the relationship between the FM organization and others within the core business. For example, within the core business, you might have IT, you might have security, you might have health and safety. So what this standard helps to do is to understand the relationships from a people perspective between these different functional areas. What makes the standard different from other standards is that most standards focus on developing processes and procedures to produce outcome and increase operational performance. However, this standard focuses on people and the relationship between people and how it can influence those persons to produce positive outcomes for the facility and ultimately for the demand organization. 41016 deals with technology. It's currently under development and is expected to be released in 2023. And this document aims at increasing the technological literacy of facilities managers and would provide information on to develop FM technology strategy as part of the overall strategy to support the core business. 41017 deals with guidance and emergency preparedness and management of an epidemic, and given where we are now with COVID-19, it's very relevant. So the purpose is to provide guidance to ensure the health and safety of people by providing a robust framework by which facility management function can respond to emergencies and outbreaks of pandemic in the workplace. So this is a work in progress. Then we have 41018, which is development of facilities management policy. And what this standard does, it provides guidance and recommendations in which the organization can develop its policy to support the day-to-day operation of the facilities management organization, as well as the client organization. Then we have 41019, and this standard deals with sustainability and resiliency. As we grapple with climate change, biological disruption, sustainability and resilience are important concepts for the FM to understand and to incorporate in their daily operations. So this particular standard will be particularly useful for FM. So it's indicated it's currently under development and will provide guidance which FMs can incorporate into their facilities management system. Then we have 41020. This is also under development, and this standard will aim to provide guidance on setting a mechanism for performance measurement management and for assessing the impact on improved facility outcomes. And again, this standard is closely related to the quality theme of the Technical Committee 267. The last standard is the key standard as far as the family of standard is concerned, and that is the 41001, which is the management system standard, which I just want to spend a few minutes on. Right. So 41001 is a typical management system standard in that it follows the high-level structure of all management system standards. The structure is the same. There are 10 clauses, and the 10 clauses carry the same name. So the first part of the standard identifies the scope, and that really speaks to the purpose of the standard. The second clause of the standard identifies any normative references, and these are any existing standards which has to be read in conjunction with the current standards. So for 41001, there's only one normative reference, which is the 41011, which is the vocabulary. Terms and definition, that is very important in terms of understanding what the standard is about and getting a full appreciation of the intent of the standard. The context of the organization is the base at which you start to develop the standard. So you need to understand what the organization is about, what influences the organization, what are the needs. So what the standard does, it provides a framework for the FM organization to work through in understanding the context of the organization. And there are 5 subclauses which assist in the developing the understanding of the context of the organization. Looking at external and internal issues, needs and expectations, You define the boundaries of the facilities management system and define what will comprise the facilities management system. So once the context of the organization has been developed and understood, then the next step is to understand how the leadership would respond to the standard. And for any management system standard, it's important to ensure that you have leadership commitment and leadership buy-in. And what the leadership of the organization does is really set the facilities management policy and establish the roles and responsibilities of the different players responsible for the work and for implementing the standard. So the clause 4 and 5 deals with the facilities management system at the strategic level. We also have clauses which deals with planning. And one of the key things the standard addresses is risk and opportunities. So the organization needs to understand what are the risk and opportunities and plan to mitigate or to address those risk and opportunities. So plan is an integral part of this framework. And of course, to support the context of the organization, the leadership and planning, we need to have resources. We need to ensure that the persons operating the facilities management system are competent to do so, that we have effective communication up across down the organization, that documents are retained, and that we develop organizational knowledge as we continually improve the standard. Operations, which is the bulk of the work that we do as facilities managers. We need to ensure that we have a system in place for planning and control the day-to-day operations of the facilities. How we coordinate with interested parties.
Hi, Keith. Just to let you know, your volume has dropped quite a bit. We're not hearing you as clearly.
Okay. Is this better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right. So in terms of operation, what this part of the standard deals with is how you define planning and control and how you coordinate with other interested parties. So interested parties would be, of course, your end users and your customers and other functional areas within the organization. And it also deals with how you integrate the services in terms of outsourced and contracted work, and in terms of how you manage your supply chain. Performance evaluation is a very critical part of the standard, and this is where the measurement and internal audit takes place. It leads then to a management review, where management reviews the results and takes decision, which then leads to clause 10 of the standards. Based on the outcome of the performance evaluation, how does the organization deal with non-conformity, where there are discrepancies between what exists and what the standard requires, how we continue to improve the FM system, and what actions could we take to prevent further non-conformities. So all in all, there are 26 subclauses which comprise the standard, and there is an appendix, annex. And that annex is a critical part of the standard. What that annex does is provide further guidance for each of the clauses and subclauses of the standard. So it is critical that you read Annex A in conjunction with the main clauses of the standard. This management system standard is based on the plan, do, check, action cycle. So we realize that a lot of the work deals, a lot of the standards clause call for planning. There are things that once you plan, you need to implement. So that's where the do comes in. The check deals with the performance evaluation, and the action deals with the performance improvement initiatives. So this standard provide guidance at these 3 levels, the strategic levels. So clauses 4 and 5 addresses the strategic aspect of the facilities management system. Clauses 6, 7, 9, and 10 deals with the tactical aspects, and whereas clause 8 deals with the operational aspect. Right, so organizations may be interested in implementing their base standard, which is 410.01, and there are several options available to organizations. Based on the maturity and familiarity of the organization with the standard, they could do it for themselves, where they use their own internal resources to develop the facilities management system. The second option is that the organization can do so, of course, with the help of a consultant. So the internal resources undertake most of the work with guidance from an external consultant. And the third option is where the consultant does everything, develops the management system standard, of course, in consultation with the key stakeholders in the organization, and provides training, etc., for the users on the system. Some organizations may opt to go for certification, and this is a description of what the certification process involves. So it starts off with, of course, you need to obtain a copy of the standard to be familiar with what the standard requires. Then you do a gap analysis. Although it's indicated as optional, is very important. What the gap analysis does is determine where the organization is in comparison with the requirements of the standard. And so it looks at the 26 clauses of the standard to determine where the organization aligns with those clauses. Once that is completed, then the organization could opt to do an on-site audit. It could be broken down into 2. You could have a stage 1 audit where you actually visit the locations, you look at the processes, you observe the processes, you observe how the facilities are managed. And then in preparation for the certification audit, you can do a stage 2 assessment if there are significant non-conformances arising out of the stage 1 audit. So to achieve certification, you normally engage a certification body. That certification does what is called a third-party audit. Or once the auditor is satisfied that the facilities management system is effectively implemented and complies with requirements of the standard, then it would recommend certification. Once you're certified, then you do surveillance audit every year, and you have your management system recertified every 3 years. Right, so but it's not really necessary. Some organizations may opt not to go for certification and may just satisfy themselves with self-certification, which of course is a cheap option. So in summary, what are the benefits of the ISO family of standard? So ISO 41K is created by FMs, largely 4 FMs. It's important to note that 410.01 is the glue that holds the family of standards together. That's the base standard. There are currently 5 published standards. 6 are currently under development, and we have 1 under review. 41K provide guidelines for designing, planning, delivery, and improvement of facilities management services. And of course, organizations could opt for self-certification or third-party certification. So this is the end of my presentation. I would take questions if there are any now.
Thank you very much, Keith. One question that was already posted in the chat from Kevin is, what is the cost of the family? What is the average cost of the family of standards?
Right, so typically the cost, it depends on, of course, the size of the standards. So the smallest standard, the cost is approximately 41 US. The largest standard, the cost is around 175 US. And this is for the electronic copy of the standard. And of course, so you can get this, you could purchase a standard online from ISO, or you can do it through the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you very much. I think you did answer the question that was posed in the chat. Just in terms of just walking through the process, because I mean, one of the value adds for this session was really getting an insight, into what the whole process is about, and whom more or less in terms of company wise should tackle this. What do you think is one of the major obstacles maybe for an organization who may be considering this to pursue in a Caribbean setting?
All right, so it depends on whether the organization wants to go for third-party certification. If the organization is contemplating third-party certification, and one of the major obstacles would be cost. But apart from the cost for the initial certification audit, remember there are annual surveillance audits, and the management system has to be certified every 3 years. So cost could be a disincentive for prospective organizations. However, we have to look at cost in relation to the benefit which the standard offers. Another challenge could be time, because you need to develop procedures, you may need to refine your processes, you need to document your processes. And given the intensive nature of facilities management, one may not have the time to dedicate to developing the documentation necessary to support the standard. So again, the option is to get a consultant to do that. And the third challenge that organizations would face in terms of the standard, of course, has to do with change and how you manage change. So essentially, the standard would require some change in terms of how the organization operates. So critical success factor for the implementation of the standard is to implement concurrently with the standard management of change project to allow smooth implementation of the standard. So I would say those are the three main challenges with respect to the standard.
Thank you, because that is, I mean, I think one of the biggest takeaways is just knowing how to do it, right? And what are the things you can do to prepare your organization if it is you, as you said, going for that sort of third-party certification. Just a reminder to everyone here, we are encouraging, if you do want to unmute, you could raise your hand to ask a question. In terms of another question though, I know, just without any too deep research, that the process in terms of companies who have become certified in this ISO standard, I think it's still sort of growing, right? And it's getting out there. I know you touched on it a bit, but certainly if you could expand a bit more on the benefits in terms of we know it's going to cost us a lot of money if we really want to get serious about this. But I think one of the things we always look at in business is, what am I going to get out of this, and when, right? What do you say for an FM company, specifically a service provider? What do you think would be like one major benefit to your organization?
Right, so the major principal benefit, of course, would be customer satisfaction, because you will have a management system, your service delivery would be aligned to the needs and expectations of the customers, The system allows for feedback from the customers, and the system allows you to put processes in place to set objectives which are aligned with the requirements of the customers. So yes, that would be the key benefit for the FM organization in terms of customer satisfaction, and of course in terms of winning additional business. But once you have satisfied customer, that is one of the key selling points for that organization. So it's all about customer satisfaction through process, through systems, procedures that you're able to assess the effectiveness of the outcomes and the results.
Absolutely, because once we get those customers, that's what we want. At the end of the day, business bringing in more business, right? So we do. I think they just needed a little encouragement, Keith. We getting bombarded with questions. So Shane, because you are brave enough to have your hand raised, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Quick question. I don't know if I missed this during your presentation, Mr. Spencer. But ISO 41017, the guidance on emergency preparedness and management of an epidemic, I believe it said it's under development.
That's correct.
When is that one expected to be completed?
I think it's around 2022, I think.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah. So they are at the stage where they have drafted the standards. Now, these standards go through a whole process before it gets published. So I think they are at the first stage where the standard is in fact being drafted. So once that is complete, they'll go through the other stages before the standard is released. So there's a whole quality check process before the standards are released.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Shane. And I think it just paints the picture that it really is this sort of work in progress. The whole idea of FM to begin with is generally still new as this profession. So it's to me, it's just very exciting to know that the ISO side of it is there to support us in what we do. Okay, so Keith, you have two more questions so far. One is from Jerome Rogers, and he is asking, what is the general time frame for the process of acquiring certification? And he wants to know if that depends on the org structure, right? And if you could give an idea of timelines and if it's really this correlation to your org structure and size of your company.
All right, so in terms of timeline, it's difficult to give a timeline. It all depends on where the organization is as far as the requirements of the standards are concerned. So if the organization meets most of the requirements, within a few months, the organization could get certification. If there's a situation where the organization needs to develop its processes, need to put in place all the systems to meet the requirements of the 26 clauses, then it'll take a while before the organization could become certified. And of course, it depends on the resources, whether the organization has internal resources to dedicate the task of developing the procedures, objectives, etc. In terms of alignment with the organization, if I understand correctly what you're asking, alignment with the demand organization or the client organization, if it's that you're asking, again, the nature of the organization, the competitiveness of the industry in which the organization operates would impact on the time that it would take to develop the facilities management system, because we need to bear in mind that the facilities management system aligns and supports the business of the demand organization. So it all depends on how the demand organization is structured in the industry, and that would impact on how long it would take to implement facilities management system that supports that particular demand organization.
Agreed completely. Thanks very much for that, Keith. The other question is from Jackie Gittin. She's asking, how does the standard measure? Oh, this is cool. How does the standard measure against LEED certification?
Right. So
So
the
is it
LEED,
comparable? Mm-hmm.
the LEED certification is quite different, but that deals with energy conservation, whereas this particular standard deals essentially with performance and outcomes, and it ensures performance and outcomes by putting a system in place in terms of identifying a policy objectives and the correct processes. What are the correct processes that are required to ensure that the outcomes are delivered so that the facility is delivered in such a way and presented in such a way that it encourages productivity, it encourages and enhances customer experience. So to answer the question, it's very different from LEED certification, and it's more geared towards enhancing the performance of the facilities management organization in terms of delivering on customer service.
Yes, and to me that is very spot on. We have another question. How can local persons get involved in the formulation of these standards? Is it possible for us to have a say in their development or even their revision from a local or regional context?
All right, so currently Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards role on the technical committee is that of an observer. So should there be an interest in participating in the standard development and review, what we need to do, we need to reach the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards indicating that interest. How it operates is that once the Trinidad and Tobago Standard agrees, then the local stakeholders will need to form a mirror committee. So remember those 8 working groups that comprise the Technical Committee 267. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have to set up a similar working groups, and we will coordinate through, of course, the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards with the main working group, 267, in terms of putting input, in terms of making input and having our voices heard in development of the standards. I'd initially approached the Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards with respect to forming a mirror committee. I'm still awaiting a decision as far as their interest is concerned. But I think, I see no reason why we can't form a mirror committee and make our voices heard as far as these standards are concerned.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because one of the things as a chapter we've always lobbied for is certainly that say, right? In terms of where the industry goes, how it changes, how it grows, how it adapts. So I totally endorse what you're saying, Keith, in terms of, if let's try to make it happen, right? Since we already sort of have a foot in. You have another question, and this is from Akil Peters, and he's asking, do you have any current data on how the implementation of the standards may impact the KPI across industries? Is data only based on FM companies?
Okay, so the KPIs ties back to the objectives of which essentially would be what would be agreed with the demand organization. Those KPIs would be particular to the FM organization and the organization to which the FM organization is providing services. So the KPIs will be different for different organizations. So even the same FM organization providing services to other clients would have different KPIs. So the KPIs, to answer your question, all depends on what is it that the demand organization or the client organization expects in terms of outcomes for its facility. In terms of data, unfortunately, organizations do not share the data in terms of key performance indicators for the facilities management operations.
Yeah, and we see that, you know, it's not only just in the Caribbean right now, you know, a lot of I think because the standard is still so new, in terms of its rollout, it'll be kind of hard right now to have any set of data, say for us to be looking at those sort of comparisons that are being asked at present.
Actually, it's really difficult to determine how many organizations globally are certified. Because no organization maintains a database of certified facilities management organizations at the moment.
Right. Great point. We have another question. What has been the international, and this is kind of, I guess, on what we were talking about just now, what has been the international uptake and acceptance of the standard along with its adoption in associations? Like, if so the person who asked the question is stated that they think it was answered before when we were talking about it. But yeah, so it was about the international uptake and acceptance overall of the standard so far.
Right, so where we have seen evidence of uptake would be, for example, in the Middle East and in Asia, some parts of Europe. There's a keen interest, and I think one of the first organizations that got their certification was from Asia. To a lesser extent, North America, there has been a slow uptake compared with Asia and Europe. I guess it all depends on the maturity of the particular region in terms of their readiness to adopt this standard. I mean, most organizations focus on the more common standards like ISO 9001, the 45001, even the Environmental Management System Standard 14001, rather than facilities management. So I think it's up to facilities managers or the facilities management industry to push to ensure that this standard is embraced by all, because I mean, a lot of work has gone into the development of these standards, and the standard does provide good guidance to guide practitioners, to guide the industries, and even to provide guidance for end users and for organizations that benefit from facility services. So I think it requires effort from facilities managers to drive the uptake of the standards. So it's not really a situation where it is client or demand organization driven. It is more driven by the facilities management service providers. And that is why the uptake is not as fast as it is for the other management system standards.
Yes, definitely. Well, we seem to have come to the end of our Q&A segment. Keith, I would ask though, that's a great question. Is this you asked, this was asked? No, this was the first poll. I would ask though, Keith, if there's anything if you wanted to have any last words to share with our audience before we just go into the voter thanks.
I think we lost Keith for a moment there. We give him a minute to reconnect.
Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, I think you were frozen for a little bit. We were just saying we've come to the end of the Q&A, and we just wanted to know if there were any last words that you wanted to share with all who are present here before we do the vote of thanks.
Well, here's the poll. Here's the poll. So I'm going to launch the poll.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to close the poll now.
Mhm.
All right, so we have a situation where
Yes, the appetite is there.
yeah, it is definitely there. It is definitely
Very nice.
there.
Very
Facilities
good.
management family of standards. Like anything else, it is not the silver bullet, but given what facilities management is and how demanding it is, it might help us dodge the bullet. So I would advocate, I mean, even if you're not at the moment contemplating pursuing certification, I think the first step is to get a copy of the standard, read through it, and see how you could apply it to your organization. And you don't have to apply the entire thing, you could do it incrementally. But at the end of the day, it provides a framework for improving the performance of your facilities management system.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Keith, on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago chapter of IFMA, which you are no stranger to, being one of our past presidents, we just really want to thank you, because to me it's always very powerful for us to hear from our own locally grown experts, right? I mean, we could have gotten someone from IFMA, from the ISO team, whatever it is, but it is fantastic that we have a local expert here who can break it down for us, show us how it could be applied in our own context, right? So for me, it was very informative. And for those who were asking, we have recorded it. So we will be sharing that with the recording with our members. But Keith, on behalf of all of us here and our entire board, thank you once again for always being so open to coming to our meetings, to share, to interact, to guide. You know, it really is a great opportunity for all of us here to have forums like this with you. So thank you again, and all the best to you on your continued journey.
Thank you very much, and you are most welcome.
Thank you. So at this time, we do pass it over to our President Vaughan, who will just share with us some upcoming events, and he will walk us through to the end of our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akian, and thank you very much, Keith. Just a few brief announcements. Sorry, my apologies. Just a few brief announcements. At the chapter, we are also very passionate about educating and development of our membership. So one of the avenues that we're used to facilitate that is via the training that we offer directly from IFMA. So we have our next cohort of the FMP, the Facility Management Professional Designation, that's starting on October 4th, and that will be running for about 6 to 8 weeks. That's right, Giselle?
Yes, it is.
Right. And then sometime early at the beginning of next year, we're also going to be looking to offer the SFP designation, the Sustainable Facility Professional designation as well. We also want to let you know that World Workplace, that's the premier conference of IFMA, that is going to be held from October 26th to 28th this year. We all are aware of the concerns with COVID-19 and international travel. and we are liaising with IFMA on the potential of doing something here locally that would allow us to tie in with that event. So you'll be able to experience it from here within our shores. So stay tuned for further information on that. You can stay tuned on our website and follow us on our social media. We're very active on Facebook, very active on LinkedIn as well. And we also have a WhatsApp chat, which we use to send a lot of notifications regularly. So please drop us a line if you want to be added to our mailing list, if you want to be added to the WhatsApp chat as well. And also, we are sending out a survey. We're trying to get some more information from our membership. You can look out for that survey. What we're trying to find out is how we can serve you better as a chapter, what kind of information or training or workshops you would like us to host during our chapter meetings. And basically, we're trying to get some feedback from you. So look out for that survey as well. And then finally, I just want to thank everyone for coming, especially all of you that was so very early and punctual from 5 o'clock. We had a number of persons coming in. So we wanted to thank you for joining us and look forward for our next chapter meeting. And again, we will send out a notification of the time and date when that's going to be held. So with that, I'd like to bring the meeting to a close and thank you again to our presenter Keith, Giselle for handling the question and answer segment, and all of you for attending and joining us with here today. So please be safe, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.